Today I'm excited to start what I hope will be the first in a series of videos on big ideas. What are big ideas? It's exactly what it sounds like. They're the kind of things you can't knock out in a weekend. I have a whole list of big ideas. Some are conceptual that will never actually happen. Some are totally feasible. They take different amounts of time and money and effort. At some point, I realized I wasn't going to be able to do all these in my lifetime, so I better start documenting them. If someone else thinks they're a great idea, then they can take off with it too. Today, we're calling this Big Idea number 31. It's the Art Collective. So there were two things that inspired this idea. The first was where I learned to screen print, which was Screwball Press in Chicago, run by Steve Walters. And at the time, he had kind of a co op going where you would pay a fee to be a member for a year and get hands on instruction on screen printing. And thereafter, you had access to the shop so you could screen print. And sometimes this meant calling ahead to schedule a time to print, depending on how many other people were trying to use the space. But it was a very interesting concept to me. The second is a big barn that exists somewhere west of Route 30 between Yorkville and Sugar Grove, Illinois. This barn, I was told, was a dairy barn at one point. It's absolutely massive. It's at least 3 stories tall. It has ramps going up to the second story on both ends. There's probably a fourth story in there. Every time I would go past this, I would think, oh, it would be great if I had a barn that big. I would do so many things. If you don't know already, I have a ton of hobbies. And I'm pretty fortunate that I live in a house alone where I have a drum set in the basement. I have keyboards and guitars just everywhere. And now I have my own screen printing studio in the basement. I have a small garage that when the car isn't in there, I can do a little bit of woodworking. This works for me because no one else lives here and says, well, you can't have a drum set and you can't have guitars everywhere. But there might be a day when I want someone else to live here. And even now, the house is getting to be at capacity. It would be difficult to bring in things like a ceramic kiln where I might need more electrical power and more space. Plus, I would need a potter's wheel and all that kind of stuff. So I was thinking about this idea, why can't you have a space that's like a gym, but instead of exercise equipment, it's stuff you make art with? That could look like a number of things. Here are some of the ideas that I've come up with. So these are just my ideas for what kind of spaces you might have in such a collective. It's really up to the group of people who start it, what it has. But in my mind, there's like an oil painting space that's ventilated. You don't have to worry about the fumes of all the things. I would really love to have a ceramic space, different kinds of kilns, different kinds of wheels, hand building, whatever. A little bit of woodworking space would be great. It doesn't have to be a full furniture building shop, just some chop saws, some table saws, things that you need every once in a while. In that vein, maybe you would have a metal shop. I would totally learn to weld if I had access to a welder. You could have a recording space for musicians or people doing podcasts or whatever. That might just be a room that's sort of kind of soundproofed. I think it would be great if there were a stage to perform things, plays, music, whatever. All you need is an elevated space. And finally, like a gift shop seems like a no-brainer, a place where the artists of the collective could sell their things. And you're going to talk about what kind of different amenities you want to have in this place. There's lots of different things you could offer other than the spaces. A basic sort of kitchen or break room, it makes sense to me. Just a couple microwaves. Maybe there's an oven. I don't know. That's up to you. Figure it out. A nice convenience might be a shower or two because making art can be messy. And if you're going to make a day of it, maybe you got to be somewhere afterwards. This isn't meant to be a gym, but maybe you have just a treadmill or two for people to kind of walk off some steam after the art's not going well, because that's the thing that happens. Maybe just for fun, if it's a big enough space, you have a pool table. You could shoot some pool. It could be foosball, whatever. Like I said, the group is into. just something to kind of break up the art every once in a while. Maybe have a grill outside or a fire pit, because not everyone has a backyard that they can just have people over and sit around a fire. Maybe for the older people in the group, or as an exclusive benefit, you have a bar where you don't have to go spend a lot of money, you just bring your own stuff. What kind of activities are you going to have at this place? Obviously, you're going to make stuff. That's what the whole point of the place is. And I feel like it totally makes sense that you would host workshops. You would teach people how to make stuff. Maybe that's something you charge the public for. It's a way to keep the lights on. You could host plays, one person plays, established plays, whatever you got the space for. Along with that, I think, is musical performances. That's always important to me. There's no reason you couldn't invite guest lecturers. And maybe every Thursday you have a potluck dinner or something. It's totally up to you. These are just some ideas that I came up with. What kind of ideas do you generate if you get 30 other people involved? So this art collective could look like a number of different things from a business standpoint. It could be a totally corporate enterprise, or it could be a local nonprofit, or anything in between. You might just start with 3 people who rent out a spare garage somewhere. I don't want to go into too many details, but my preferred method of operation would be what's actually a cooperative. And even cooperatives themselves vary a lot in style and size. It could be a very niche local thing. But even some big brands like REI Recreational Equipment and Ace Hardware are co-ops. But this isn't about co-ops. So moving on. This idea is so important to me that I feel like if I can't make this happen in my own community, then I'm going to have to move to a community where one exists or it is feasible. I was so excited about this idea, I designed a web page for what a artist collective might look like. The only reason I'm not working harder to make this a reality in my community right now is I'm personally in the middle of a career transition that's kind of taking some priority. It's been a little bit of a stressful time. I don't have the bandwidth to add establishing an art collective here in town. But hopefully that's not far away. I would like to be started on this by the end of 2023. I think it just starts with you get some people who are interested. You start to look and see what spaces are available. You figure out how many people are interested, what kind of efforts or resources they're willing to lend. Maybe it'll be a thing that just starts out of my house. Who knows? But I'm excited about this idea. If you have something like this in your community, I would like to hear more about it. If you are interested in starting something like this, let me know how you're thinking about doing it. I'll share some of my ideas. We can talk. This has been Big Idea number 31, The Art Collective.